Hello, it's Paddy in the studio.
It's Laura in the studio. And with us, would you like to introduce yourselves? My lord, I think we're meant to tell you.
Yes, please doff your cap. I'm Stewart Wood, a Labour member of the House of Lords, former special advisor to Gordon Brown for 10 years, and then advisor to Ed Miliband for 5 years.
I'm Lucia Hodgson. I'm a former advisor to Boris Johnson and Andrea Leadsom during the Brexit years, and I now am a co-founder of Charlesby Strategy.
And you both look remarkably well on having gone through those very traumatic and deep political experiences.
Years of therapy.
Stuart, were you there on Gordon Brown's day one and his final day?
I was, yes.
As PM?
I mean, Gordon actually had 2 final days because he left number 10 when the election happened, and then there was the indeterminate result, and he went back in squatting for 5 days, and I was one of the few people he brought back in, which was weird because we weren't allowed to use our computers or plug things in.
So you know the Keir Starmer and the Andy Burnham feeling?
I do, yeah. It's very strange. It's very strange. When we arrived in 2007, after 10 years of Tony Blair, all the advisors queue up and go through what's called the link door. There's this sort of secret Star Trek door between the Cabinet Office at 70 Whitehall, goes into the back of Downing Street. And we walked through, and all our kind of assistants were lined up, and we were matched off like a kind of dating agency. And you went to your room, and they all had tears in their eyes, and we thought, oh my God, they must really hate us. You know, it must be all these Blairites have told us.
We held that as well.
And I thought, why? And then I realised 3 years later when we left, because they just said goodbye to people they'd worked 24 hours a day with 7 days a week for years. Yeah. And it was a human thing, and that's what it was about.
Similar. So, yeah, I knew some of them from the May era and some of the civil servants that you would see up in the gallery and work with on a few sort of press releases and things like that. And you go in and it is that thing. They've sort of, some of them have been very moved and upset by sort of the goodbyes, and they've got no time to sort of dry their eyes and sort of welcome in the new team. But equally, I think it was easier that I did know some of them, and I think they knew some of the personalities they would be getting through the door, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing for them.
So interesting. One of the things you always say, Paddy, rightly, is that let's remember that politicians are human beings, and their staffers are also human beings, and they volunteer for public life with all the scrutiny and knocks and hard things that comes with it, but they are also human beings. So we are going to talk a bit more about the changeover and what that's like. And you've given us a great picture of what it can really feel like. But we do know, Paddy, a couple of new things about some of Andy Burnham's plans this morning.
So he's going to scrap digital IDs altogether. Keir Starmer had come up with a mandatory digital ID, which you could only get work from, especially if you'd come to the country in some form of migration. You could only get work with a digital ID. Then they dropped the compulsory part, and now Andy Burnham says he's going to drop it altogether.
And this is what his ally, Lucy Powell, the deputy leader of the party, possibly the deputy prime minister tomorrow, who knows? This is how she explained why they're making the change. And
then you'll hear Dave Blunkett, who was on Radio 4, who disagrees with the decision.
Well, it is an example. It's one small example of reprioritising. This is an opportunity to reset, to refresh, to look at those things that perhaps are not just taking resource, but are taking attention away for government and priorities. And I think the digital ID scheme is one such example. Something that, might not have cost a huge amount of money, but will have cost some money over time. Certainly to build it, to develop it, to make it happen, to maintain it, and all of that, those kind of things.
So, how much money are you going to save, and what are you going to do with it?
It takes attention. It takes attention away as well. So it's about being laser focused on the cost of living, laser focused on rewiring the economy, rewiring the political system in this country, and clearing the decks, if you like, of all of the other things that might distract and take away from that in terms of the focus of the government. And I think that's absolutely right. This is a moment to have a reset, have a refresh, look at those things, and I think we'll see more of that in the coming days and weeks as well.
Within 10 years, there will be a coherent, well-protected identity system because it's happening all around us.
But one of Andy Burnham's first decisions is wrong.
Well, it's his decision. You see, what I said to people on Friday is he's the Prime Minister now, or he will be tomorrow. And I'm just a guy in the House of Lords giving advice when I'm asked.
But you're sort of Yoda to him. So
I like it. I've been amused under Yoda.
David Blunkett, former Home Secretary, Cabinet Minister of many years, Andy Burnham's mentor. I'm just a normal bloke. What I say doesn't really matter.
That's right.
Not really.
But we're into the meat and potatoes of being a prime minister because
Yeah.
it's doing a thing, and guess what? It's not always popular.
Yeah, welcome to the job, right? The first pre-power briefing, and you start to create tensions. I mean, that's the way it goes. It's an interesting issue because for years Tony Blair was very keen on an ID card, not pre-digital age, but sort of pre-digital age. And then the logic for an ID card sort of came into its own, I think, with the digital era because of protection, as David Blunkett said, protection of individuals, but also the idea of stopping illegal work. So there's all sorts of social policy functions that ID cards could serve. The problem is that you've got into this world of cost, you got into this world of intrusion into people's lives, and you also got this problem of contracts with private sector providers that cause a lot of angst inside the Labour Party and inside the country. I suspect what's going to happen is they'll get headlines out of scrapping the high-level commitment and probably some savings that have been allocated in the Whitehall trajectory. But actually, as David Blunkett says, over time we'll still accrue something like a digital ID card out of functional necessity.
The other thing that has been, I suppose, winks have been tipped towards is that Burnham is likely to make the move to bring Thames Water, which is in a lot of trouble, into a form of special administration. And that might have been something that the Starmer government was going to have to do anyway, or might have decided to do. So if you put those two things together, Stewart, what do they tell us about the kind of government that this might be?
Well, I think the second one is the sort of meat and potatoes stuff when it comes to Andy's commitment to ending 40 years of neoliberalism, as he calls it, because he wants something totemic to show that he's reversing what he thinks has been a terrible settlement for the country that started with the Thatcher privatisations and all the regulatory stuff that goes around it. What's interesting, in the late 80s, that settlement about privatising our utilities was kind of the Thatcher heartbeat issue, right? And would have had a lot of support. Now, you go well into the right of politics before you get people who support the current system on public utilities. Massive public support for doing something.
Well, it's very hard when we spray sewage into the rivers.
Totally.
It's very hard to be a member of the public and back whoever's doing it, private or public. Is there a read across for you seeing Andy Burnham arrive, ditching a Keir Starmer thing? Because Boris Johnson basically campaigned not to be Theresa May in every way.
Yeah, and that, I think, was actually easier at that time because there was one massive central issue that was dominating headlines, relations with Brussels and further afield, and of course the general public wondering when on earth this thing would get done, Brexit, how long that would take and what it would look like. So being able to focus on that single thing and outline very clearly how you would do that differently to the 2 years that had gone before was, I think, a much more straightforward job than what Andy Burnham has to do now. And I think what I found really interesting about Lucy Powell's comments, which I thought were pleasantly surprising, was this realisation about what is your priority here. That I'm sure there's lots of things that Andy Burnham and his team would like to do, but the reality is they have got to find a way to tell a story. And that, I think you've seen a little bit today, is, well, that's not going to be the story. Maybe it will be in the future, but we have other things that are a priority. And I thought, actually, if they walk into the building tomorrow and take that approach, they might be onto something.
Here, though, there's a clash, though, isn't there? And one of the other things I was asking Lucy Powell about, and I think it is quite confusing, maybe for humble members of the public like ourselves, wondering, it makes me scratch my head, because Andy Burnham says, don't worry, I'm going to stick to the manifesto that you voted for 2 years ago, dear British public. Andy Burnham then says, I'm going to try and reverse everything that's happened in the last 4 decades, and this is going to be a dramatic change of direction. Sure. Huh? How are those two things both going to be true, Stuart?
That is a tension that Gordon Brown had that in 2007. You know, how could he, was he a continuer of Blair or was he a change from Blair? And the answer is you're both. And I think Andy Burnham's got a little bit more permission to be a change Prime Minister because, sad to say, Keir Starmer has not been popular. It has not been perceived to have worked. He's got a lot more latitude to do that. There'll be voices from the side saying, what about the manifesto commitment? I think as long as he sticks to the tax ones in particular, he has quite a lot of permission to do lots of things in between. I think this week you're going to see things which are totemic of a departure from the last 2 years. You'll see 3 or 4 things, I suspect, and totemic of his new emphasis on politics outside London and shifting the centre of gravity. It's a racing certainty, in my view. You can throw this back at me when it doesn't happen. That,
we do that. We do that to ourselves.
Excellent.
Yeah, we
well,
like saying
let me
when
make
we're wrong.
myself
It's
a
good.
fool alongside the two of you.
Good company.
Love you both as I do. that the first cabinet meeting will not be taking place in London, for example, right? That's the sort of thing that I suspect you'll see in the next few days. That's just a guess, but as someone who used to work on these sorts of things, that would be the kind of thing you do to show this is a different kind of politics.
Tuesday morning of Anti-West Coast, Euston, 6:15 on the way to...
Henry and Laura were yesterday telling me to brace for a slew of announcements. Having been in a sort of vacuum, are you about to say the same thing? Get ready for a flurry of announcements?
I think you'll get 3 or 4.
Go on,
They
then.
get so. I mean, well, you've already had intimations of on Thames Water. You've had intimations on stuff on North Sea oil. I think you'll get something on that. I very much suspect. I mean, if you look at opinion polling, Luke Trill, my former student, brilliantly taught by me.
Is he your former
Yeah,
student?
lovely guy.
Luke Tripp, friend of
He was
the podcast?
nothing until he got into my hands. Now he's fantastic. Runs More in Common polling company. He says, look, the public's decided what the big issue is. Doesn't matter what you politicians think. It's cost of living. Cost of living is up there, way above everything else. They have to do something on cost of living. It's a very difficult thing to do because it takes a long time to shift the cost of living. But they've got, to use the Westminster wonky term, they've got to have politics of trying, right? You've got to show that you're trying to do something about cost of living. So those are 3 things you'll see, I suspect. And then something on devolution politics outside of London.
And what might that cost of living measure look like? So,
Well,
They floated the energy bills cuts of VAT.
They might take the standing charge out of gas bills, for instance. I've read in the papers today. Also, this Keir Starmer administration, which is in power for another day, capped rises on train fares. Andy Burnham's obsessed with buses. He could give free bus travel or cap bus travel, and it would look like a through line from Manchester.
And apparently that's one of the things they're thinking about is sort of the £2 cap or whatever. But
which of course was Louise Haigh policy. She was the transport secretary, and she fought to have the cap on buses continued. There was a big hoo-ha about it.
I can't say enough as a posh Radio 4 voice how important talking bus is to talk bus and don't talk wonk. I just think if in early days,
Bus, not wonk.
if he talks bus, that's totally different.
the thing is, obviously, they're about to have a very long summer recess. So the more they can do, and you'd hope they've been using the last couple of weeks to plot out what they do with this otherwise empty spots where Parliament's not sitting. So they will have to try and demonstrate through these announcements and possibly a tour of some description.
I think he's going to do. I think he's going
that
to
they're diving straight in. Otherwise, I think, unfortunately, like Starmer, you end up with another early period of dissatisfaction. Nothing's changing fast enough, and it will be hard to demonstrate change fast enough without Parliament sitting, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
One of his allies, Stewart, said to me that they reckoned he has maybe 6, maybe 8 months to show an impact. How would you characterise because the public is very unhappy with politicians at the moment. Millions of people have felt skint for a very, very long time. The public is not tolerant of politicians right now. How long, and I'm not trying to be a ridiculous journalist, actually like a Dead Ringers this week, there was a sketch about everybody slagging off Andy Burnham for being a disappointment before he even walks into Downing Street. But it's a genuine question. The polling suggests that people are willing to give Andy Burnham a hearing.
Yeah.
But that thing about pace, how pressing do you feel it is for him to show not just that he's in charge, but he's doing things that will make a difference to people?
I agree. Well, he's lucky in some respects. The timing of the transition is actually very good for him because he's got this week when Parliament's not sitting, much to Kemi Badenoch's fury, to set out some things, tram lines, as it were. Then he's got, as you say, he's got 6 weeks of... He'll still be up and about, but politics does take a little bit of a backseat until the beginning of September. Then he's got party conference season in Liverpool, where I think he'll get a hero's welcome, and he gets to set out more agenda there. So for 3 months, he can set out agenda. But you're right that, I mean, you can't turn around the cost of living crisis in 6 months, six months, but you can do things which are plausibly connected to it, right? Both long-term changes, maybe things like the way our energy prices are way too high, you start looking at that, but also some short-term things, maybe on buses, maybe on energy. We've got an energy price cap coming in September. That's a moment.
I think you might.
So, yeah, there's all sorts of levers you could pull. And so by Christmas, you can say, you see, I've made a start on these things.
What is it like becoming Prime Minister? When you witnessed Gordon Brown become Prime Minister, when you witnessed Boris Johnson can you tell us how you think it'll change Andy Burnham?
I think he has to capitalise on the genuine excitement of the moment amongst the team as well. And I think that pulling on people's, the work they've done to help him get here. I mean, it's a shorter period of time for Burnham. It's come around so quickly, whereas obviously for Boris, it was probably something he wasn't just thinking about for a long time, but they had the longer
From the age of 4.
Yes. World king, I think, was the phrase.
So you mean take the mo? He's got the mo, go with it.
I think so. But also, I'm interested to see what, we haven't had a prime minister with such a, authentic personality in a while. I think he can lean on that a little bit. We saw when he walked into the Commons and had that moment across the dispatch box. There's a lightness of touch to him that I think we've lacked. I think he can lean into that a little bit.
And that, just to remind people, somebody said he's not the Messiah, and he, quick as a flash, said naughty
That's
boys.
great. Yeah.
And what's your answer to how it changes people and what effect will it have on him?
With Gordon Brown, it was because he was at the Treasury, and even if you didn't like Gordon Brown, he was successful politically at the Treasury for 10 years. It was difficult for him to get out of Treasury mode and become a Prime Minister. That Andy Burnham won't have that problem, I think.
Although how he comes
being
out
a
of
mayor,
mayoral mode
that's true.
will
He's a
be
bit of that, but he's
interesting.
had different jobs in central government as well. It's a very moving moment, I think, especially if you've been loyal. We were talking earlier on about people who've been loyal to Andy for years and years, and that's a very moving. The first thing you do is, famously, you sign letters. Handwritten letters to the people who are in charge of our nuclear subs in the event that communication's cut off and there's a conflict. And this is what you open the letter to know what to do with your missiles. And it's a real concentration of the mind, because it is a conscience moment, but it's also a national security moment, and it makes you realise the magnitude of your job. Straight away, you get brought into number 10, the door opens, and people in military uniforms are there. The flunkies like me get shut out, and there's a half hour of just those people. And I think that concentrates the mind, and then you're straight into the agenda. And the key thing about being a number 10 is you could just let events and appointments overwhelm you every day unless you have the strategic nous to take a grip and try and direct the machine.
He's also got sort of the phone calls with foreign leaders, which I think for him will be really important, actually. I mean, they are more almost a ceremonial thing, but actually for someone who is wanting to demonstrate that he can be effective, that he can actually take that mantle from Keir Starmer, who has done better on the world stage. That's one of sort of the things he's done and performed well on. He will want to replicate that a little bit, I think. But also some of what you were saying about the cost of living will be determined by events that we don't know about. And I think setting that that tone with world leaders early on and being clear about how he intends to deliver on the cost of living agenda and what some of the international community, how that will play into being able to lower prices for people, I think is really important.
Because for as long as there's boats stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, there is a massive risk
there's not
to
as much
our
he will be able to
economy
do
as well.
I think this is a really important point. I think Andy will be a better, I hope and I expect him to be a better explainer in chief of what's going on. We haven't really had public explanation. For example, the fact that we are borrowing in order to pay back old borrowing because of COVID, a decision we all supported across parties. Why aren't we explaining that in public much more? I think Andy will be a better sort of narrative giver. It was a weakness of Keir Starmer's, let's be honest. I think he'll be much better at that. But you've got to explain and then respond rather than just explain.
And actually, I always wondered why Keir didn't make more use of, you all know, Laura, the sort of press function that's been developed in number 10. So you can host. One of the things that was successful during COVID was the use of that room to tell the public what was going on. I always thought, why don't you keep doing that, but on cost of living or NHS waiting times? I think that not telling the public where you've come from and where you're going, hopefully that's a good, you're working to make that a positive story to tell. But there's so much opportunity to have that dialogue with the public that I think, unfortunately, Keir just did not do at all. And I feel like Burnham would be better at it.
Well, maybe explainer-in-chief might be something that we see. And I think we will see him more than we saw Keir Starmer. I think we will see him also in lots of different settings. I think that's quite clear.
I agree.
And he's very easy in different
which is
settings.
very Boris-like.
Yeah, and
put him down a high street or in a hospital, you knew you'd get great clips. And I think Burnham will have a little bit of that about him as well.
One of his close allies said to me that's one of the things he knows he's good at, and whether it's communicating to a class of kids or whether it's communicating to a big senior politician, he's equally at ease in both of those situations. But Stewart, there are doubts in parts of the Labour Party about whether or not he is going to have the chops and the gravitas to deal with some of what comes with being Prime Minister. That is there. Of course, at the moment, people are fighting their way towards microphones to say how wonderful he's going to be.
Sure.
There are people who doubt that he really has got the chops to do this.
I'm sure there are. And in a way, I think, as with Boris, actually, obviously I wasn't a fan of Boris politically, but I think that you don't really know the full character of someone until they get the job. Even with Gordon Brown, who I'd worked with for 7 years, it's a different kind of challenge, the range, the incessantness. And it's way worse than it was when I worked with Gordon Brown in Number 10, of course, because of the change in the way the media works and social media in particular. So we just don't know the answer to that.
And also,
I think you just got to have confidence. You've got to play to your strengths. You've got people around who compensate for the things you know as the boss you don't have. I mean, a prime minister who knows what they don't know and it has the courage to have people around them who can plug gaps for them, both on style, substance, and other things, is really crucial. And I actually think Andy's good at that. He knows his limits on certain things, and he knows the team he needs to have around him to have a full range of skills.
What role for your friend Ed Miliband?
I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. I'm not waiting to hear the appointment. I
Well,
think
you're not with me because you're a friend of his. You could ring
That's
him.
true.
You
But
could
I can introduce
Ring
you
him
if
now,
you're
right
desperate
now.
to have a cup of tea with him, Paddy. I mean, I think what Andy with James Pennell, his chief of staff, who was appointed a couple of weeks ago, what they've done is they've realised that they've got 2 weeks, which is a difficult 2 weeks because everyone's speculating about everything they'll make. They've kept things really close to their chest, really close to all the senior people. None of the senior people know, as far as I can work out, what jobs. It's not the jobs have been distributed and they're keeping quiet. They are really keeping it to themselves. They've got huge power. They've decided they want to set the agenda out first. This is what Andy Burnham's about, and people are appointed to an agenda-filled Andy Burnham administration. I think that's quite smart. Tough as it is for all the senior cabinet people and by the all the advisors who don't know whether tomorrow they've got a job or not or where they're going to be. But put that to one side. I think that's quite a smart thing politically to do, even though it's really squeaky bum territory for the senior ranks of the Labour Party.
It is a demonstration of power, and at the moment, and tomorrow he has at his most powerful, and
That's exactly right.
And it may fade quick. We just don't know whether or not it will fade quickly. And of course, if the team all explodes and someone says, "Oh, I'm not doing that job, thanks very much," it could all, ministerial appointments often go wrong.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, newscasters are gloriously interested in detail, just as we are. So when you say they, Stewart, who are the characters? Who are the 3 or 4 people? So it's Andy Burnham, James Purnell. Who else is in that tight circle?
Oh, around Andy Burnham. Well, I mean, Lou Haig, as you mentioned earlier on, is extremely important to Andy. There's Annalise Midgley, there's Lucy Powell, there's lots of other people from Manchester who he's very close to, who wouldn't want me to name them because they're behind the scenes people.
That's why I'm asking you to name them.
Okay, well, you know who they are because I'm sure you chat to them. But yeah, he's got a circle of people, and he's been building it up. I mean, it's not like he arrived with this sort of Reservoir Dogs team who are like he's arrived and he's brought a few people in. Remember, Andy Burnham doesn't know historically a lot of the members of the Labour Party in Parliament that well. He left Parliament 10 years ago. Most of the MPs are new since then, so he spent a lot of time getting to know them in different caucus meetings and groups. But he's accumulating a team, and James Purnell was in a way the sort of key appointment. His old friend James Purnell, slightly surprising in the sense, but really smart because they're very good friends and represent different bits of the old Labour Party.
And Lucia, you've just given us a clue, but you did comms for Boris Johnson.
Yep.
And I think if I'm hearing you both correctly, you're saying Andy Burnham's got more charisma about him, and Boris Johnson had charisma. You've said, why not do a daily news conference? Is that something which...
Maybe weekly. Daily feels a bit intense, but
a weekly
you could
news-
do something like that.
And
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
else would you do for the comms of this administration? Is it important to say to me as a voter very soon, I know you hate the churn in Downing Street. I know we said we wouldn't do it. Should he go through that door and say, those awful Tories, they changed...
Oh, I'm done with that. They need to not talk about the Tories, in my opinion. They've got to start talking more about the future and what they're doing now. And thinking about how this went for Starmer in his first 6 months. People were saying, okay, you've had your fill of blaming what's gone before you. I think that gets tiresome very quickly. If I were him, I would really be thinking about what he's doing now and talk more about that, because I think that has been an issue for them to be able to outline that to people more in a way that they understand. And also, I would get him out with members of the public. I mean, it did work very well for Boris. You knew that you'd get... There's risk with that, and you'd get the sort of father in the outside the hospital complaining about wait times. But for every one of those, you do get something actually quite genuine and authentic, and that's what can then tell the story for you, rather than being locked up in Downing Street, which it sounds like he doesn't particularly want to be anyway. So why not lean into what he actually wants to spend time doing?
I mean, that's certainly what he did in Makerfield. Highly visible, highly present, and that's what everybody who is sort of in his camp, that's what they will all tell you is he loves meeting people. He loves talking to people. It can be annoying because he's sometimes late because he's still having a conversation with someone that he bumped into on the way. But also some of the people close to him, Stuart, have said to me they're worried or concerned he might lose that connection, because that's sort of where he gets some of his thinking sometimes.
His energy.
And his kind of energy. And one of his old team said to me, he used to come into the office every week and tell us about something someone had come up to him in Morrison's and said, and it gave him a new angle on it. And they didn't mean that sounds like it could be a terrible place. Oh yeah, someone said me in the supermarket. Oh, you'll never guess what my taxi driver was saying to me. But it was they said it was a genuine thing for him, because it would give him an idea or an angle on something that he might not have thought about before. And they were kind of worried about that he might lose that connection.
Yeah.
Because once you're Prime Minister, you're taken away by the military to brief you, or you're taken to this or taken to that.
And you're told by security you can't do this many visits. It's a public security issue. So it's very hard to do that. You're consumed by a Whitehall machine that wants you to make decisions, to resolve disputes between departments, as you say, with defence, all sorts of things. You've got to travel abroad, which isn't the kind of travel that I suspect Andy would gets the energy from as much, at least for now. So it's incredibly tough to fight for the time to be yourself. If that's your brand and if that's where you get your ideas and your energy from, it's going to be really tough for him to do that. I hope he's got people around him who just insist on it and are prepared to stand up to the machine.
We decided very early on that alongside Brexit, if Boris wasn't pictured with nurses or the police on some sort of visit talking about relevant things, then we'd failed. And you have to be that laser focused on it, which is why I found Lucy Powell's remarks today interesting, because I think you could do any number of things. You could go all over the place, but what's the common theme amongst that shows visually as well that you are delivering on the things that people care about?
Tony Blair wanted, I think, to move the Number 10 operation to the conference centre opposite Westminster Abbey and do not use Number 10 with its warren of hot little rooms. And we know it's now true that Morgan McSweeney and Sue Gray did have desk wars. That's been proven. The person closest.
She put him at the other end of the building.
And we know that's true now. At first we thought it was mad. So do you think Number 10... spending time out of Number 10 could be a really sensible thing to say to the public? The building doesn't work, so we're not going to use it very much. And you've already said use the new bit. How dysfunctional did you find the building, the Georgian building?
I think it's well known now that it isn't. If you were designing what this place looked like, it would not be the place that it is. I have reservations about the Number 10 in the north for a few reasons, largely that set a civil service on a task like that, and that's what they will do. What else are they going to do? And I just think in terms of that demonstration of delivery to people, is this their priority? And it will take a long time. I also think that, you can't change the fact that power is derived from the Prime Minister. How you then split that between two locations, I think, could be very problematic. So yes, Number 10 is imperfect. I'm not sure that Number 10 in the north is, and adding another layer of sort of that kind of setup is helpful. But you can get out and be amongst people and go and see things or talk about things you care about without any of it being about Number 10. You can just let that building sort of sort itself out whilst you actually focus on the priorities that matter.
It is a weird building, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
There's this cafe in the basement. I don't know if you ever used it, but
it's not great, is it? They definitely deserve coffee.
It's a first world problem if you're a special advisor to the Prime Minister, I admit, but very difficult to get food.
It really is.
You see, when you're on TV, people standing outside, when you're doing a shot outside Number 10, you see all these people going in and out of the front door. I bet you 90% of them are just going for a sandwich and they have to walk a quarter of a mile to get one. So that's my big complaint about the British state, is there's not enough food options in Number 10. But it's a weird building. You walk around, you try and get a signal with your phone, and
the signal's a big problem, actually.
Signal's a big problem.
The food was definitely lacking. You could get a decent slice of toast in the morning, and then you would just go out of the building to try and find something. But for me, better coffee would be
There's
the
some
starting
luxurious
point.
toilets in there, but I won't go into more detail. It's probably the wrong hour for it. There's no hour for this, is there? But anyway.
But one of the things about transition, so I was told that in Theresa May's government, when she moved in as Prime Minister, the bit opposite her office was gents' loos.
Yeah.
And the powers that be thought that was not very nice, so they decided to make it into a nice waiting area for when she was having people to come and visit her, and they finished it a couple of days before she got the boot.
Well, this is also possibly the problem with the Number 10 North. How quickly will all of this happen? But I do think that the setup of the building is problematic. A Prime Minister might expect to be able to step outside of the office and have 20, 30 people determined by his priorities, in who's actually there, the diary person, the chief of staff. There is no room for them. And, the next available office is sort of down one of the rabbit warrens and so on. And it is imperfect. And I think that, I know the signal sounds like a silly point, but it's a really important point. And that's one of my overwhelming memories of coming in, is not being able to respond to the people I was supposed to be helping out in the press.
I think you put your finger on something which is really important, kind of secret of the way the British state works, which is, if the Prime Minister has a majority, usually, the last 2 years have been a bit of an exception, they can get what they want done pretty easily, right? That's the usual rule of British politics. But the thing that stops it becoming what someone once called an elective dictatorship, where the Prime Minister can just do anything they like for 5 years, is that there is no there in number 10. Number 10 is not, if you go to the White House, which I've had the privilege to do a few times, luckily with Gordon Brown, there's a massive, thousands of people work for the president. And in number 10, there aren't many people there at all. And that means that they have to rely on the departments to get their stuff done. And that's the sort of saving grace, the check and balance, if you like, on the power of the British Prime Minister.
I worry.
Prime Ministers always reach for a kind of department. Gordon Brown used the Cabinet Office for that. I don't know how Boris built up some internal people, I know.
Yeah.
But they're always looking for a power, because they're used to pulling levers and getting things done. And in number 10, you don't do that. You work through other departments. It's a very strange way of working for a lot of the people there.
I worry the solution could be quite sticking plaster, though. Like, fundamentally, what I think we're all agreeing is that the building is just so imperfect.
It's a sort of metaphor for it, though, isn't it? Because one of the things that I've found actually that it continues to shock me is I've talked to a lot of people who've worked in government over many, many, many years. None of them think the government works well. None of them. I don't have met anybody who's either been a politician or a staffer who thinks that actually the UK government that spends, what is it, more than a trillion of our fine British pounds, actually thinks that it works well on behalf of citizens. And that's a kind of accepted truth in the Westminster bubble. And
Well, it's one of those things that the solution is so massive and expensive that nobody's particularly willing to take it on. And you can understand, when we're talking about cost of living being such a dominant concern for people, that will look quite self-interested. But actually, longer term, if you actually made that change and tried to change the machinery of government, you could actually address these problems much better.
So you told us tantalisingly you were there when Gordon Brown squatted for 5 days in Downing Street. What will Keir Starmer's final day be like, his final night be like?
Wow, well, I guess the movers have already come and taken lots of the stuff away, right? So I think tomorrow's a day of goodbyes, really, and there'll be lots of tears. There'll be lots of permanent staff there who have worked closely with Keir for 2 and a bit years, 2 years, and then there's this extraordinary moment. I always think there should be a sort of sitcom made about this. There's this sort of transition half hour, 45 minutes when you wave goodbye to the old team. I was literally the last advisor to leave number 10 in 2010 when Gordon left finally, because I'd forgotten something, I had to go back in and get it. So I had the distinction of being the last person to leave. And as I went back in to pick up my bag or whatever I'd left, all my friends were busily moving stuff around, because they'd already had instructions from Team Cameron about what room should be used for what. They were carrying desks out. It was extraordinary. There's this sort of 35, 40-minute period. I don't know how long it'll be tomorrow, probably a bit longer.
Maybe.
When you just reshuffle the furniture and you say, oh, we'll have that room ready and we'll get rid of that, and you'll chuck all the old documents out. It's quite an extraordinary moment.
And the cabinet appointments tomorrow, that's such a bit of political theatre.
It is.
You've obviously been inside and you've been outside.
Yeah.
You've seen 10 administrations.
And you see people walking up the street.
And then you think, that's the first time you'll know.
Yes, and the first person in will be the unless something really weird happens, the first person in will be the Chancellor, because that's always the first appointment. It's the most important appointment. And then after that, maybe foreign or home. You're in the Lords. You could be a minister. There we are. Here's the scoop. Stewart Wood's going to be the Chancellor.
Exactly.
It's a huge moment. I remember actually when Keir Starmer did it, they were so well organised for that first day. They had been planning it to the nth degree, and they'd done all the waving and cheering and people wearing flags in the street. Waving flags, not wearing flags. It's a different kind of thing. But I remember seeing all the cabinet ministers. They all came and lined up at the end, waiting for their moment to walk up in front of the cameras. And they sort of one by one. They were so like the kind of prefects arriving for the first day of school. They were all so delighted and so happy and so kind of ready for it. And I remember seeing them waiting at the end of the street to sort of get their cue and then walk up. And it was kind of impeccably choreographed. But who knows what this is going to be like? I mean, it's fascinating because they've had to do it at speed. And remember, you said the timing was good for them, but he wanted to wait till September. He wanted more time.
He did.
And hasn't had it.
And he's got to do something. Normally, so when Keir Starmer won, he had a shadow team, and he basically made the phone calls or had the conversations of appointing people. Andy Burnham's got to stand people down as well as appoint people. Right? He's got to say to some people, I think he's probably going to do this first from what's
Today?
I've no idea, but he's got to tell people, I'm sorry, but you're not having a place, right? And that's so the toughest conversations will probably come first. He's not going to make appointments until he's created the spaces he needs. So he's got a slightly more tricky, or at least personally tricky thing to do to start. Yeah.
Do you think he'll find that difficult?
I'm sure it'll be difficult. I hope it's difficult because it's a weighty thing. I mean, I'd like him to think it's difficult, but it's what you have to do, right?
Go on, your predictions then.
I think Liverpool will win the Premier League next year.
Can I start it off with a newscaster, Trevor? Officers of State sweepstake, Chancellor Ed Miliband, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, so keepers are keepers, wild card, consolation prize for Rachel Reeves, Chief Whip. Love the podcast, thanks. What do you think of Trevor's predictions?
Not bad. I definitely think those are the people that are in the mix, but I think Shabana could be Chancellor. I think Ed could be given Foreign. You will know much better than me, though.
I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm reading the same reports. I really am.
I've told Laura I'm fascinated by the Rachel Reeves attitude. Keir Starmer has behaved with good grace. He's said it, and he's given permission to people to do this transition without him sulking, well, not in publicly.
Yes.
So Rachel Reeves wasn't there in Downing Street for Keir, but she was there in the House of Commons for Andy with her selfie. Then she said, it's up to him. She's going to have a role, isn't she?
I hope so. I hope she's got a big role, yeah. She's a very talented person, yeah. And it's difficult because the last 2 years has not gone well, for the government as a whole. And she's the number 2 person in that government. So it takes real courage and identity to sort of get another role and bounce back from that and redefine yourself in the next role. One of the things I like about Ed Miliband is that he's, apart from being my friend, he's someone who had the biggest slap in the face you can get. He lost an election and he decided to stay in Westminster politics and start again and come back through a cabinet role. I think that breeds, Ian Duncan Smith did the same sort of thing. I think that breeds courage and strength and the ability to make tough decisions. And I think Rachel will benefit from that. But I really hope she gets a senior job. Yeah.
I think Theresa May did this very well. She didn't go into a role, but she did take a very important role on the backbench and continued to turn up and take part in the sorts of debates that she was really passionate about. And I do think that...
And she does it in the Lords now as well.
Yes, exactly. And I do think that people like May who have such a commitment to sort of public service, I think there's definitely more in the Commons and Lords that you can do and continue to pursue the things that you care about.
Do you think Keir Starmer will do some of that?
Yes, I mean, again, I'm not privileged to what he's going to do. It feels to me like he's on the way out. That when he said,
he said
this is the end of my political career.
It was quite a loud and definitive
that wasn't
goodbye,
wasn't
it?
Rishi Sunak, as I remember, said, "I'll continue to serve."
Yeah.
He didn't say that, so it felt a little bit. Maybe that was his way of putting himself out of speculation for a job. I don't know, but it feels like he's thinking about the next thing, and who can blame him? I mean, that may be exactly the right thing for him and his family.
Well, we're on our way. We've had such privileged access talking to you two. I think you two need your own podcast. That's what worries me, Laura. There's so
Let
much.
us know when you're planning
We'll
retirement.
have you on for a short 5-minute snippet.
It's such a competitive space. Is there any big thing you haven't said that you want to tell newscasters before we bring this to an end?
Think of the family. Think of Andy's wife and kids, and their world is about to be absolutely transformed. A mixture of enforced privacy and unrelenting scrutiny from a distance. Andy, I know, is thinking a lot about his family arrangements, particularly with the North, the North, and that. Whatever your politics, always have respect and thought for the family of the people who take on the biggest job there is, because it is extraordinarily pressured.
I think it's, for me, picking up on something that you said just a while ago, which is on the 6 to 8 months, which I was like, God, that's actually quite long. I think it will be shorter, where the public will be making their assessment of how well he's done. So I think it's to pick up on some of what we've already talked about that prioritisation piece. If you want to talk about 10 things, people aren't going to remember what they are, and they're going to be wondering why things still feel expensive. And for me, it just is that sense of focus on the thing that's going to make the biggest difference electorally as well, and remain laser focused on it.
3-word slogan. So you very successfully, you had get it done.
Yeah.
Take back control.
Get Brexit done.
Get Brexit
yeah,
done.
They need
Take
a
back
slogan.
control.
Yeah, what would it be?
Rishi Sunak then had stop the boats. Didn't go very well. But if you had to do 3 words, because he's tried a few, it's like place, not politics, which I'm not sure that means things to people. Hope
in every heart.
Hope in every heart.
Yeah.
Doesn't really say what it's going to do, though.
I would give back control he used the other day, and I think
give
that
back
may because
control.
obviously it feeds off the Brexit thing, but it's a
more
it's a
sort of
devolution
generous.
message, and it's a people in charge again message rather than these nasty Westminster elites.
Terrible, nasty elites.
Yeah, with one exception.
So
What, you?
Yeah.
we say no. I'm the one whose job it is to bring this to a close. So I don't know why. Stewart Wood, Lord Wood, thank you very much. Lucia Hodgson, thank you very much indeed.
It's been very, very nice, but I'm privileged to have you guys with us, taking us behind the shiny black front door.
Goodbye.
We've got to say something else, though, Paddy, before we say goodbye, because we are saying goodbye to newscasts for the next 6 weeks.
Yes.
Old newscasts, or not newscasts, will be coming into your feed, which are more interesting than they sound. Newscasts taking a look at some big moments of the news in recent decades. So they will be popping up into your feed. So there'll be plenty for you to listen to and enjoy. We will be back the first weekend of September together. How shall we survive? How shall I survive?
I'll send you
without
WhatsApps.
you. Have to send me WhatsApps.
On to deleting messages, disappearing messages. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Goodbye.
Goodbye.